What's going on, everybody? It's Joe from the Acceptable Casualties. We're back to doing another video today. Today we're going to be doing a little comparison video between Flames of War and Battlegroup. I know I had a couple people on the channel and some people over on Facebook were kind of asking questions between the two, like what the differences are. I know we've had some people jump from Flames of War over to Battlegroup. I'm one of them. I've been playing a lot lately. So I just kind of wanted to throw a little information out there so some of you guys that aren't in the know can get in the know, and you can really kind of see how both of these gaming systems, they're actually really compatible with all the models that you guys have. So I'm going to run it down a list. It's like, I think like roughly 15 points that I'll be covering. It's not going to be a comparison as far as like which one I think is better than the other, because that doesn't really matter, because my opinions are going to be different than your guys' opinions. What it's going to be more is based on, is going to be like information I'm going to be giving you guys based on, like, I think it's roughly 15 bullet points that I'm going to try to hit, so you guys can kind of get a feel for what each game has to offer, what the feel of the game is on the tabletop, and and then you guys can take that information, you guys can put it to use yourselves. So I'm just going to dive right into it right now, and we're going to get right into it. So first thing up, if you guys are wondering, I'm going to be looking at my notes I have down here in front of me. So if you guys see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. The first thing up is going to be the scale. So for Flames of War, for you guys that have played, 15 millimeter for your vehicles, for your infantry, for your buildings, everything is based around 15 mil. Same thing with Battlegroup. You can play it in 15 mil, or you can play it in 20 mil. It works at either one. So the rule sets for both, they're really compatible as far as like measuring distances and everything else that goes with it as far as scale. So if you have 15 millimeter models in one, you can play in the other one, and vice versa. So another thing to talk about is going to be the basing for each of these. So for those of you who play Flames of War, you know that your basing is going to be on a squad level, so you're going to get like 4 or 5 models per base, and then each base that you take a casualty for, you just pull the entire base off. And that works like that pretty much game-wide for Flames of War. Over for Battlegroup, the basing's a little bit different. You can use your Flames of War bases over there, but at its core, Battlegroup is set up to be individually based in 15 mil. And I'll be explaining Battlegroup in 15 mil because that's where it is right now. You can play it in 20 mil, but I'll be doing it in 15 mil. So Battlegroup, it's set up at its core to be individually based. You pull individual models off when you take a casualty, and that's kind of just how you do it for the basing for that. You can use group basing for Battlegroup, and it's not really an issue at all. The only thing that you do, instead of pulling bases off at that point, you're just using dice as wound counters built into when you move your bases. So when you hit a certain amount of wounds, you just pull the base off, and that's pretty much how it would work for that. Now, you could use your Battlegroup models for Flames of War. You would just have to, I don't think you have to rebase them. There's a company out there called Litco. There's a couple other ones that do MDF basing. You just figure out what bases that you have your Battlegroup models for. So say if you do them in like, 15 millimeter like circle bases that you put your models on, you just buy other bases that are roughly the same parameters as the Flames of War bases, and just get them slotted, and you'd be able to put your Battlegroup bases, the single bases, in those trays. Almost like you play for like other historical games. They build almost like a tray for it, and as long as they're the same size as the Flames of War bases, you could totally do it. And down the road, I think in the next couple weeks, I have a couple projects that I have lined up, and one of the things I'm going to try to do is build a single based army for Battlegroup, but also have larger bases that I'll be able to slot them into for Flames of War. So if I'm able to pull that off, you guys will see it. But in theory, you could go back and forth with both of them, no problem, just with some minor tweaks to how you would track casualties or have to rebase. But yeah, the basing, like I said, Flames of War, it's by squad. For Battlegroup, it's going to be based off of individuals. Next up, the another thing to talk about is going to be table size for your games. Flames of War, for the most part, we play all of our games on 6x4. Sometimes you can have some of the smaller stuff. You can play on a 4x4 table, but at its core, it's like a 6x4 game. So all the terrain that you have, everything for that, would roll over to Battlegroup and vice versa, because Battlegroup is mostly played on a 6x4 or a 6x6 table. So yeah, like that's compatible. The size of your games as far as table space and the amount of terrain that you have in your collections or what you have down at the club, it'll all still work and cross over well. You don't need any more or any less. You don't need bigger tables or smaller tables. For the most part, 6x4 is going to work. Now, obviously, if you play bigger games, you'll have to scale to that. If you play smaller games, you scale to that as well. But at its core, 6x4 seems to be a standard for both of these games. So there's going to be no real deviation on that. Another thing I wanted to cover too was optimal game size. For us who play Flames of War, You guys know it seems like the game plays best at a company level. You get just a huge variety of model on the table. I mean, between your tanks and your infantry and all your support, at that points value, you get a really nice size game that flows pretty well, and it looks great on the table too in that company level. I mean, you got a bunch of toys. I mean, it just looks really, really good. And Flames of War, I think, like I said, at optimal game is going to be at company level. It still works for platoon. If you get more tables, it's still going to work at battalion level. But I think the game plays best at a company level at around 1,500 points. I think for Flames of War, 1,500 to 1,850, somewhere in that wheelhouse. For Battle Group, the games that I've played so far, I played 4 or 5 games. I think 3 are going to be posted. Well, 2 are only posted now, but I have a couple more coming up. But from what I've played right now, I feel like the platoon level is going to be, for me at least, and from what I've noticed, platoon level seems like where it flows best. Like squad level seems like it's kind of small game, be able to punch out relatively quickly. Company level for battle groups seems like you're going to need to really like pull out a serious afternoon or possibly like a full day to get like a company level game in. Like this seems like there's a lot more that you do with battle group, and it seems like the games will stretch. So it seems like at platoon level, everything's really manageable. You still have a lot of action, a lot of maneuvering on the table. It still feels really, really good. The model count's not going to be as high visually as the company level for Flames of War, but as far as the pacing goes and how well the game feels on tabletop, I feel like Battle Group, from my experience so far, and it might change the more I play, but from what I've played so far and what I've noticed, it seems like platoon level is going to be where this really excels for how I play around here, which is, in an evening, try to get a game in like 3 hours, maybe 4 hours tops, or just do like a pickup game with some other people. It seems like Battle Group is going to excel platoon level. Flames of War really fits that well at a company level. As far as pacing of the game goes, within both of these, like I said, it's going to be based on company level compared to platoon level from here on out. For most things, as how the comparison is going to go. So for the pace of the game, I think when you play Flames of War, you're going to go into that and you're going to be expecting a fast-paced game. It's going to be a lot of action, like a lot of shooting, a lot of stuff blowing up, a lot of heavy pushing up the table. And it's going to be a fast-paced, action-packed game at its core. That's what Flames of War is. Like, there's still some strategy and some thinking to it, but it doesn't play. It doesn't play very slow. It's not so much of a grind in most cases. Like I said, I think it is. It's about blowing stuff up, and it's about moving your stuff around. It's an action movie, I think, is what Flames of War is, and it's awesome at what it does. Like I said, I like it for what it is. Then you look over to Battle Group, and what I've noticed with that, it's a little bit slower in its pacing because you're doing a lot more thinking as far as what you're going to be sitting there and what you're going to be doing for your tactics, how the orders system plays out, which we'll get into later, and just how the game unravels as you play turn by turn. There's a lot more risk reward in Battle Group. Things can go wrong very quickly in that as well, as if you overextend. Like I said, you really have to think out your turns, and the pacing, it slows because of that. But like I said, if you like that kind of thing, which is like slow plotting, really planning out your turns in advance, putting a lot of thought into each unit's move, Battle Group might be right up your alley. Whereas if you're looking for, like I said, the more the action-packed, every turn has stuff blowing up, there's a lot... There's like I said, a lot of fast pace to it. Flames of War might be more your thing, but like I said, they both play really, really well on the tabletop for what they do. You just have to be open minded enough and accept each one for what they are, because I think in the pace of game section, you really can't compare the two at this point. I think for how the games are paced and how things roll out, they are completely different beasts on the tabletop, and very different experiences, but both are very enjoyable in their own particular way, and they're both worth giving a shot just for that alone, because you might not know what the other one has to offer. You might just have heard other people play, or you never played it, or maybe you've never even heard of it at all. So it's worth at least rolling the dice a couple times on each one, because you might find some things that you like better in one than you do in the other. So yeah, they both have things to offer as far as the pacing of the games go. For model counts, this is where things I think start to get a little deceiving. So when you play company level for Flames of War, obviously you're looking at your model count on the table, and you're just going to have a lot more compared to that Battle Group platoon level. So you're going to look at it and you think, wow, more models. It's going to be a much bigger game, maybe a little bit slower because you have so much more stuff to control on the table. But that's actually kind of deceiving, because when you're playing Flames of War, you're working by platoons for the most part, and not individual models or squads in that sense. You're moving an entire platoon of tanks or an entire platoon of infantry. Everything works in these giant blobs pretty much on the tabletop. So you're moving these giant entities, and usually in a 1,500 point game, you're looking at 6 to 10 platoons somewhere in there. So you're moving 6 to 10 units on the table at once. So it might look like a lot of models, but it might, like I said, your model count might look like it's large, but the pacing of the game isn't really affected by it that much because you're moving them in such large groups. Since this is an action-packed type of game, these large units, you're taking heavy amounts of casualties, but you're still in the fight because the units are so big. So you're looking at like 6 to 10 platoons to control. You go over to Battlegroup. You're playing on a platoon size, which you're looking at your model count, and it's much smaller. But the catch to that is, you bring a platoon of infantry. It's not one entity on its own. It's going to be you're going to have like your squad leader. Your platoon leader is going to be his own entity. You're going to have each of the 3 rifle squads that make up the platoon. They're going to be their own entities. You're going to have, like say for British, the Piat inside the unit is going to be his own entity. The 2-inch mortar is going to be his own entity. So inside that one platoon right there, you have what, six different units that you use out of that just one platoon. So when you're playing a platoon size game, after you work in the rifle platoon, some of the supports that you have, and like your forward HQ and some of the other things that you bring into your list, you're looking at roughly 12 to maybe 20 units when you start hovering around that 500 point game to 750 point game, depending on what you load out. So the model count is going to be substantially lower when you compare the two, but the amount of units that you have active on the table is much higher for Battlegroup, and that tends to slow the game down because you have so many more options on the table to move and use each turn. And I'll get into that later too, because we'll be going over some mechanics for the games as well. But it's very deceiving when you first look at it just from a company to platoon comparison. It doesn't really sink in to as far as how the games work for model counts until you really see how they unfold on how the units like play and move on the table. Like I said, more models definitely for Flames of War, but more units to use on a platoon level compared to Flames of War for Battlegroup. So that's worth keeping in mind when you get onto the table. You'll be managing a lot more at the platoon level for Battlegroup opposed to what you're managing for Flames of War at a company level. List building for each of them. So for Flames of War, the one thing I love about Flames of War is the amount of lists that you have. I mean, you go, every theater, every book that you pick up for Flames of War, I mean, you just have this huge selection of lists, all different types of armies, from infantry to tank to recce. Well, version 4, not so much recce anymore. I mean, it's still there, but it's not as useful. But you have just tons of lists with tons of options built into it. And what I like about the Flames of War list building is that you have it all on one page in front of you, and you visually can just kind of see how it all flows together and puts together, and it's right there on the rails for you. I mean, it takes takes the research part out of it, I guess. Like if you want to build, 6 Fallschirmjäger, like which I like to play, or you want to build like a Tankovia or Strakovia list for a certain part of the war in a certain area. Flames of War has these lists set up for you. Now, are they all completely historical? No, they're not. They have options in there, that might not fit in certain areas. But at its core, these lists, they're very robust. They have almost all the options that you would think of, plus maybe even a little bit more in some cases for every theater that you'd want. And like I said, I really like that about them. As far as your list building goes tactically for Flames of War, you can play infantry. Infantry still works, but Flames of War at its core seems like it has been and it is going to continue to be a tank heavy game. Tanks are going to be king from here on out. So if you're in a tank player and that's what you're looking for, Flames of War will be right up your alley. Like, it is a tank heavy. It's a tank heavy game with your list building, especially playing competitively or doing pickup games. Most people like to bring the armor That's just how the game goes. It is what it is. So, like I said, tank is king for Flames of War, and you do have a ton of variety in your list building. When you go over to Battlegroup, the list building seems like it's not a complete 180, but it's very different than that. Battlegroup at its core, it seems like it is built around infantry. You take your whatever your game size you're playing for, like so we'll do platoon level, you have to take at least one platoon of infantry in your list, possibly up to two. I think Russians you can even get up to three, I think at platoon level. But it's centered around your infantry platoon, and then off of that you're building support. So your list building is really about supporting your infantry. You get your infantry platoon, and then you're adding like anti-tank assets, machine gun assets, mortar assets, and it's all built around the platoon that you're building from this list. It's not like a set list for Flames of War where you have like all these boxes you need to fill. It's pretty wide open. You just have to fill your prerequisite for your infantry platoon and your forward HQ, and then outside of that you're really kind of building around that. You can still build tank lists, you can do that, but you have to have at least one unit of infantry in there, and then after you have that it's pretty much wide open. They leave the list building really up to the player. So if you have a buddy that you play with all the time, you can build any wacky list that you want to put together that's based off of the book that you're playing out of. So you'll be able to, if you're doing like Fall of the Reich, you'll have like all the German equipment just sitting there, and you literally can just pull out a la carte what you want to put on the table based off of that. Like I said, as long as you just hit your prerequisite, which is going to be one infantry platoon. They leave it up to you to do the research if you want to build historical lists or anything like that. They have a lot of the information in the Battlegroup books that you can kind of start to pull out of, or like I said, if you just do a quick internet search and you want to play like a certain Panzer division or anything like that, you just look it up, see what it's kind of comprised of, and then you kind of use your take on it. Plus you can also cater your lists more to the kind of missions that you have set up that you're going to be playing with your buddies when you play Battlegroup. So there's a lot more flexibility with the list building for Battlegroup, without house ruling. This is just taking both of these games for what they are in the rule book and what they are in the army books. There's a lot more flexibility in the Battlegroup lists and what they give you, but the thing is, it also takes a little bit more work on your end if you want to put together a historical list or anything along those lines, whereas Flames of War has you more on the rails, but it has a very large variety of lists for you to choose from. So that's kind of how the list building would work. Once you start getting into the game, you're going to be looking at turn mechanics and kind of how things work with this. So for Flames of War, for turn mechanics, you're going to be looking at your turn is going to be broken down into multiple phases, and the game overall is really built on an I go, you go system. So for Flames of War, you're going to have your movement phase, you're going to have your shooting phase, and you're going to have your assaulting phase. And when you play Flames of War, every unit that's available to do anything is able to do it. So if you're pinned, you still can shoot in most cases, but there's penalty. There's things that you can do, and everybody can do it. So like say that nobody's pinned or there's no issues with your Flames of War. Every unit moves, every unit can shoot, and then every unit that's able to can assault throughout these three phases. So you get everybody in a position. You shoot the targets that you want to shoot, and then based on those outcomes, you might put yourself in positions to do assaults or everything, but you plan everything as an army, as a company, as each phase unfolds. Certain things open up, certain things may close off. It just depends on what your results are for your turn as it flows. And that's how that goes. And then obviously at the end of your turn, your opponent goes. So it's, I do everything I got to do. Your opponent watches, waits, and then he'll wait for his turn to react to what happens. You get into Battlegroup, things change a little bit differently. There's no phases per se. So how it works is instead of you getting to move your whole force, you have to roll order dice. It's a 2d6 for platoon. So you might have like 10 units on the table, and then say you roll a 5 with your 2 dice. And then you have 5 orders, and then if you have a certain amount of officers on the table, they can add to your orders. So let's say you get 7 orders. So with those 7 orders that you would have for your 10 units that are on the table for Battlegroup, you can only hand them out to certain units, and then each one of those units acts individually. So instead of just moving everybody in phases, you almost have to chain together your orders and really put some thought into how you're going to be using them, because they play off of each other, and you can really string together some really strategic moves, but you have to take a little bit of time to really think out your moves ahead of time. It's not just about like, let's just move up these tanks, blast away, and do what we're going to do. There's a little more thought that goes in the battle group, and your turn's going to be a little bit longer because of it, but I think when you pull off certain maneuvers and tactics on the table, it's a little more rewarding with battle group because your thought processes are real. They pay off more. So yeah, so how the turn mechanic works, like I said, it's based off of orders. You'll give one unit an order. They'll be able to, move and shoot twice, move twice. You can set them in ambush, so you can wait until your opponent goes, and then maybe when somebody moves across open ground and your unit can kind of see them, you can pop your ambush right there, so you can shoot them when they're vulnerable, or you can set your guys to have a reserve move order. So on your opponent's turn, if they move a unit maybe out of a hotly contested area and they have nobody else left to activate over there, you can be like, hey, I want to use my reserve move order, and then you can start moving aggressively into open areas or making pushes up certain parts of the table that have been left open, or maybe there's units that aren't going to be used because your opponent didn't roll very well for his orders. So there's a lot of give and take, a lot of thought process as far as the turn mechanics go for battle group. It's a lot more engaging. You're not sitting and waiting for your turn just to play the game. You really have to kind of pay attention to what your opponent's doing on his turn, so you can kind of react if you have reserve orders set up. And also for your turn, it's not just let me just push everybody ahead. You really have to put some thought into what units you're going to activate and how you're going to activate them to chain together your battle plans. So they're much different beasts as far as the turn mechanics go, and it does affect the pacing of the game, because the way that Flames of War is set up, it's going to be like every turn is very bang, bang, bang through the phases. It keeps the pacing of the game going. It really feeds into that fast-paced, action-packed. Like I said, everybody's moving at once, so you get that visual look of like an entire company pushing up the table. Everybody's shooting at once, and then you got these massive assaults that go off, and all this happens in stages. So visually, it has a very different feel to it, and it really plays to the strength of the game, which is a very fast-paced, action-packed game. And the mechanics, the turn mechanics, really play well to that. Whereas Battle Group setup is much more methodical, much slower in the thought process and how it goes. When I say much slower, it's not like the game's going to drag on when you compare these company level to platoon level. Like it's still kind of roughly in the same wheelhouse, maybe like an hour longer, give or take, for our experience. But like I said, we're also still new with the rules. But the turn mechanics definitely lend themselves to the style of each of the games. Also going in the combat mechanics. So for Flames of War, the way it seems like the combat mechanics and stat lines built into the game, it's really built for fairly simple stat lines. You have simple armor, simple guns, simple modifications or modifiers to dice rolls, and saves. It's really simple, bang bang. It lends itself to the speed of the rule set. Once you play a couple games, it's really just about you roll a d6, you see what happens, and then like you roll another d6 for a save, whatever happens. It's really, really simple. You add one, subtract one. There's not a lot to it. It's really simple stat lines, simple mechanics for combat, and it keeps the game flowing. And that's what it's about. It's about keeping the game flowing, keeping it action-packed, keeping it rolling for Flames of War. You go over to the Battle Group, and Battle Group still slows down. I assume it's going to speed up first a little bit more, but even at its core, it's not as fast as Flames of War goes in that sense for the combat mechanics, because there's a little bit more that you have to do there. You have to you have the option to either shoot the unit, you have the option to suppress the unit. If you're going to shoot the unit to try to do damage, you have to observe them in combat. And the kind of thought processes behind that is like, you have gunfire, smoke, you have like all this mayhem going on the battlefield. Just because you see like a helmet popping up somewhere doesn't mean that you're just going to open up on them. You have to kind of observe with your unit and wait for a good time to fire. And if the opportunity doesn't present itself, or you don't pick it up at the best time, you're not going to be able to shoot. So there's that mechanic to it where you have to observe a unit before you shoot, and there's modifiers for that. So you have that into play. Then you also have, for your shooting, you have other modifiers based on if you're shooting AP, HE, if it's going to be rifle fire, autocannon, what the distance modifiers are, and it's not just outside of 16, it's broken down in like 10-inch increments. So like there's all these other modifiers that you take into account when you're going to be shooting, or you're going to be suppressing, or you're going to be firing your mortars. There's a little bit more rivet counting and a little bit more reference as far as going to charts. But if you like that kind of depth in your combat rule system, you'll absolutely love it. Like I said, if that's what you're looking for, is like a little bit more, fat to chew on as far as your firefights and things like that go. There's a ton to offer in Battlegroup, and it does still flow. It still flows really well. Like once you start picking up on some of the, like how the observation works and the firing ranges and some of that kind of stuff, you get a little more familiar with how your units work on the battlefield with their loadouts, because it is going to be a different field than Flames of War is, and vice versa. If you're coming from Battlegroup trying to Flames of War out, they do play much different in the combat mechanics, but. They're both, like I said, they both do what they do extremely well. If that's like the kind of game experience you're looking for, they do provide very different game experiences. Nothing to say for Battlegroup for referring to the charts and, like I said, the rivet counting of it for your units and your guns and stuff like that. When you're out there and, like I said, you're going over your AP and stuff like that. So like, you shoot a tank in Flames of War, you're just gonna see if you hit it, and then if you hit it, you have your the strength of your gun, and then somebody has to make an armor save to kind of bounce it. Like it at its core, that's kind of how it works. When you get over to Battlegroup, it kind of works the same way, but you're also there's a chart you have to refer to. So like a strength 9 gun for Battlegroup, it's broken down into numbers for your strength of your gun and then letters for your armor. So it kind of makes like a square graph, and then you kind of find in the middle where they match up, and that's the dice roll that you need. So that's kind of how you figure out how you're going to pop vehicles. The cool thing is about it is they do have when you look at it, they have this for your tanks and stuff. There's a basic armor stat line. When you look at it, there's like 3 letters for front, side, and rear, and then you're going to have your gun, and then it's going to have for you. And this is for tank talk. For your gun, you're going to have what kind of cannon you have, what the strength is, but also when you play the game, you have a certain amount of ammunition for your tanks. So you might have like 6 rounds to carry for your T-34-85. And then with those 6 rounds before the game starts, you have to pick, are you going to take 4 AP and 2 HE, or maybe you just go all AP. So you have to kind of manage your ammunition as well as you play. So for Flames of War, you're just plugging away, man. Like there's no such thing as you depleting ammunition. Like you can fire like 1,000 shots with your Tiger tank, and it doesn't matter. Whereas in Battlegroup, you have to really manage how you're going to shoot, because if you're playing the long distance shootout game, you're going to burn through your ammunition with a very small percentage of damaging the enemy or even hitting the enemy in that case. So you have that to worry about as well. Like it's a lot of thought in the positioning. Do I get closer to get better shots and conserve my ammunition, or do I plug away from distance and just hope to get that lucky hit and take that tank out and do that? And you can play that game, and there's also units in there that can replenish your tanks with ammunition and things like that. So like I said, the combat mechanics, there's a lot more depth to what happens in Battlegroup, but and I said, like, if that's the kind of play style that you're looking for, that you're into, it's very rewarding in what it is. If you're just looking for, like I said, for that action-packed, fast-paced, you want to get maybe a game or 2 in a night, the combat mechanics for Flames of War lend itself to that, because, like I said, it's really simple, just a couple dice rolls, and you see if something blows up, and if it does, you just keep on rolling to the next thing. So, like I said, that's how kind of the combat, like at its core, how both of them work. For depth of rules, between the two systems, both of them, I mean, they both have a lot of rules, but they look a little bit different. So for Flames of War, there's the whole V3 V4 thing, but we're just going to talk about V4 because it's the new one right now. Version 3, I prefer version 3 to version 4. Just because I just like the way it feels on the tabletop better. But version 4 is how we'll compare right now, because that's what's new, and that's what people seem to be playing right now. So for the depth of rules for version 4, there's still a lot of options that you have for it. Some stuff has been streamlined for Flames of War, but that was I think at its core they just wanted to kind of streamline the game a little bit more, make it a little more accessible to players. There's still depth to it, but it's not. I don't think it's as deep as it was in some areas. And like I said, it just made it more accessible right now. It's definitely the depth of the rules and the way the rules are set up. It's more toward a very balanced and competitive style of play, and the rules lend itself to that. Like I said, just like I talked about the combat and the turn mechanics, the way the rules are set up is to keep the game flowing at a fast pace, not really bogged down with a lot of things, and just try to get you in and out of a game in under 2 hours at the company level, like maybe 2.5 hours, like in some cases. But if you know what you're doing, you can punch a game out in 2 hours at 1,500 points. So if you do that, that's kind of the way the rules are set up. Like there's some depth to it in some areas, but for the most part, the way the rules are set up now, I think for V4, there's some streamlining there to kind of just keep the ball rolling and flowing. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's if that's what you're looking for in the game, it does it really, really well. If you're looking more for a little more depth in your rules, like I said, a little more fat to chew on, some more options that you can really dig into in all phases of the game, as far as like what specific units can do, like what pioneers can do, medics, all the things that you'd want a little bit more out of, like with as far as depth of gameplay goes, or like I said, for like the shooting and the moving and just the mechanics for Battlegroup. There's a lot more fat to chew on there, and I don't want to say it's like comparing chess to checkers, 'cause I don't think that's fair, but I think for Battlegroup, when you look at its depth of rules, there's a lot more options built into the rules of the game. Each unit really does feel like it does what it's supposed to do, or mimic what it's supposed to do from a reality to gameplay kind of feel on the tabletop. It does all of those things really well, and the rules are there for you to take it as far as you want to go. Like I said, without house ruling, just the games as they are. That's just kind of how they're set up. Whereas the Flames of War rule set, they do have those units there that do specific things, but some options are not very deep at all, or they're very limited, like Recce, what they're able to do, or Pioneers, what they're able to do. Like, the options aren't very deep in some of those areas, and that's for the case of keeping the game fast-paced and just streamlining the game and making it more accessible. Whereas Battlegroup, there's a lot more options there, so if you're looking for a little more depth in your game and a little more depth out of your units, that might be the way to go. But also, I can see both of these. It's kind of hard to mix both players, and so we're going through that in the Flames of War community right now, where you're comparing version 3 players to version 4 players. Some people want a little more depth, and other people prefer that like streamlined, and it doesn't really mix very well. So as far as the depths of rules go, either you have to go into it, whether you're playing Flames of War and Battlegroup, depending on what mentality you are to play, you have to kind of go in it either being open-minded if you're not used to that certain depth or lack of depth inside the rules, and give it a go when you get on the table and see how it plays, because if you have somebody who's like a rivet counter, really likes the deep rules, and somebody kind of wants to streamline a fast game, they're going to get different experiences. If they're playing together, you're going to get very different experiences on the tabletop for each one of those. So that's something to keep in mind when you go in and play. If you're going to be from Battlegroup camp, jumping into Flames of War, from Flames of War jumping into Battlegroup, try to go into it with an open mind as far as what the game has to offer. Give it a couple games to see how it plays out. You might surprise yourself, and you might actually like it, not thinking that you would going into it, and vice versa. So just something to be aware of when you get into the game as far as the depth of rules go. As far as the balance of the rules, so right now for Flames of War, after the streamlining and the way everything works out between the lists, the game mechanics, just the rule set in general for Flames of War, it's very balanced. It's very geared toward tournament play, pickup game play, where you put your stuff down on the table and it's a very even playing field. And there's going to be shenanigans if somebody wants to dig through the rule book and dig through lists. People are going to be able to put some stuff together. It's unavoidable. It's like that in any gaming system. But at its core, it's built for balance. From, like I said, from pickup games up to just the tournament level. it's built so I can show up, you can show up. We don't even know each other, but we can put our stuff on the table, and there's kind of like a common ground there, where we both have a 50-50 chance to kind of win the game for the most part, once the dice start to fly. And that's Flames of War, I think. It's a really good thing for Flames of War. Like I said, if you're a competitive player, or if you don't have like a tight-knit group, you just kind of show up at the gaming club occasionally and you just want to roll some dice, Flames of War really works well, I think, for that. It's like I said, just the way that the game is built, it works well for that. When you get over to Battlegroup, I think Battlegroup really shines based off just reading through the rules, playing a couple games. If you have a tight-knit group, it's not really built for tournament, and they talk about that when they talk about the game. You go to their forums or anything like that. It's not about tournament play. It's really about narrative games and creating historical scenarios. That's what the game is about. So if you have like a really tight knit like wargaming group, or if you just play, like I play against like Vin a lot. So like if you have somebody that you play against a lot, I think Battlegroup does really well because it lends itself to a really narrative kind of feel to it. The game itself, as far as the balance goes, like there's balance in the game, but the way the missions are set up, the way the theater books are set up, there's like a historical imbalance to it, and I don't know if that makes sense, but like every battle wasn't fought on even ground. Every battle wasn't fought between even armies. The scenarios in the game, the way the lists are set up for Battlegroup, it all reflects that, and also the way the mechanics work, as far as the way the orders fall, and the way the morale goes, and then I'll get into the morale in a second as well. That all plays to I want to say not balanced, because that's not the word that I'm looking for, but it's a little more chaotic as far as the balance goes. There's a lot more ebb and flow that go to the game. It's not just really based off of me doing damage to you, you doing damage to me. It's really built into the mechanics of the game. So I think, like I said, it lends itself to, if you're trying to play those games where you want to get like a story of something happening on the tabletop, or you're trying to recreate like a historical battle on the table. I think Battlegroup really works very well for that, and the more I play it, I think that's really starting to sink in more. Like, you play Battlegroup not because you want this even style battle and this competitive play. Like, you play competitively, but it's not the same kind of feel. You're going in there and you're playing for the story when you play Battlegroup. When you're playing Flames of War, you're playing for more of a competitive game that's balanced, where we both come out and we have a 50-50 chance to play. So on the balance level, that's kind of how both they play. One thing I skipped over to is going to be, and it's still falling into the conversation, is the end game. How you achieve victory for Flames of War and Battlegroup. So for Flames of War, you roll up your mission, whatever it's going to be, and you either try to roll in and take an objective, or for version 4 you try to like just decimate a company and get them to break when you take them below 2 units on the table. Very hard to break a company in version 4. I'm not a big fan of how the morale works, but that's a totally different beast. We're really not talking about that right now. But that's at its core what it is. It's you're trying to push somebody off an objective, take an objective, and hold it without them coming back and contesting it. You only need to take one objective. That's pretty much how you can win the game. Or, like I said, or you just completely break a company by just decimating it on the tabletop. So that's pretty much how your morale is going to be working there. As far as morale for your own units for Flames of War, when you end up taking casualties, you have to be below 2 tanks to see if that unit breaks. For your infantry, you have to be like below 3 infantry bases. To break your platoons is extremely difficult, as well as breaking your companies. So you're taking like 60-70% casualties before you even think about you breaking off the table. So if you're looking for that Rambo-esque fighting to the last man, like I said, action-packed, models on the table blowing each other up, that's how the morale system plays into Flames of War. And like I said, it fits the system. It fits version 4 for what they wanted to do. And if you're looking for that kind of experience, where you're not just peeling models off for taking a minor amount of casualties, or you're going for the action action-based system compared to a realism-based, and you don't really want the realistic feel to it. Like I said, Flames of War, it works for that morale. You're going to keep your models on the table longer. It's going to be much higher casualty rate. It just has a very different feel. You go over to Battlegroup, the way the morale works over there is if you take an objective, the game might not be over. You take an objective, it's just a morale hit to your opponent. If you lose a unit, it's a morale hit to your opponent, and you're not looking for Battlegroup. The main way to lose Battlegroup is you have morale. So based on the units that you buy in your list, you get a battle rating. Like I said, infantry platoons, tanks, whatever you end up putting in your list, they give you a battle rating for it. That number tallies up, and then if you say 25 is your battle rating. For every unit that you lose, you pull a token out of a bag, and it'll have a number on it. And if you pull like a 3 out, your battle rating would drop down to a 22. And that continues to drop based on the units that you lose, or if you lose an objective, you have to take a pull. There's other ways to take pulls, but ultimately you're playing against your opponent to whoever gets down to a battle rating of 0 first, in most cases, is how you break your opponent. You don't know, you keep it secret, so you don't know what your opponent's morale is at that point. So there's a lot of thought as far as, is now the time to push? Are they close to breaking? Is now the time for me to be aggressive? And if it pays off, you can break a company. If it doesn't pay off and they're in much better shape than you thought they were, now you're putting yourself in a bad position as far as you taking morale hits. So like there's that flow to it, and like I said, they both play a little bit different. And like I said, it's also a balance mechanic. It goes back to what I was talking about before. For Flames of War, you know what it takes to beat your opponent. You know what objective you have to take. You know what units you have to destroy to get them to break and win the game. It's geared toward tournament and very competitive play, the mechanics, and the morale plays well to that kind of feel of a game. Where Battlegroup, it's a lot of mystery. I mean, it's pretty much what it is. Like, units are going to be losing off the table. Objectives are going to keep going back and forth if in certain parts of the battlefield. You might take it and I might take it back, and it's going to have morale effects on each of us. You lose a unit, I don't know what kind of morale hit you took to it. There's even situations where you lose a unit and you pull a token out of that bag, that random, or that shit bag is what they call it. You pull that out, and it might be something that, like a minefield or something like that. You play like a minefield or like a low ammo token, and you can play it on one of your opponent's tanks. Now, like one of my tanks, even though I blew you up, one of my tanks might now be out of ammunition, or my command car might have just rode over a minefield. So like there's the morale tokens and the chit bag and how that works. It lends itself to the balance and that kind of storytelling narrative feel on the tabletop. So like I said, the way you break armies and how morale works on the tabletop is very different between the two, but they really enforce the style of game that they're both part of, and their rule systems. Now let's start getting into something a little bit different now. So theater options, as far as what you have available to you army-wise, lists, where rules are for the game. So for Flames of War, if you played Flames of War, there's like a library of books. I mean, going back from whatever version you played up until now, they have rules for everything. I mean, from the Pacific, from early war to late war. I mean, you're fighting in Europe, North Africa, and you're fighting, out in Wake Island. I mean, they just have rules for everything. Russians against Japanese. They have lists. I mean, it's literally everything under the sun for Flames of War. They've really covered everything. In some cases, they covered it multiple times, just updating books and doing what else they're going to do with it. But yeah, like there are, for theater options and books, there's Flames of War has tons of stuff, and it's all. That's one of the things I do like about it is if there's a theater that you want to play in a certain era in the war, there's a book for it. Flames of War has a book for it. How they get updated into V4, we'll have to see. But right now, if you're willing to play version 3, like there's you have everything under the sun. And they have the conversion book for version 4 to play version 3 books, so you can still do all that right now as they gradually update everything. But yeah, for Flames of War, for theater options, you pretty much have everything you can think of. There's still some stuff in the Pacific they haven't really touched on yet, but everything for Europe, North Africa, and all that. It's all there, and a little bit of Pacific at this point. When you get over to Battlegroup, since it's a little bit newer of a game, obviously it's not going to have the same depth there, but they do have some books. I mean, you have Blitzkrieg, you do have Barbarossa, you have their Tobruk book for North Africa, and I think it goes into Greece as well. They have Overlord for, like Normandy. They have Kursk for mid-war Eastern Front. They've released that they're saying to be putting out Market Garden in the fall. I have from a source that they have a lot of books lined up coming down the chute. It's just, it's going to be over the next year or two. You're going to start seeing some more stuff come out for them. So it's a newer game. They're a little bit more limited on the theaters, but they still do have a pretty decent variety, whether you want to play early war, mid-war, late war, and stuff is constantly coming out the chute. They have all the main stuff covered too. So it's like some of the smaller theaters that they're still working on putting out right now. But like I said, if you want to do Blitzkrieg early war, Barbarossa early war, it's there. If you want to do North Africa, it's there. If you want to do Normandy invasion, it's there. Fall of the Reich for the end of the war, it's there. There's stuff. You want to do the Battle of Kursk? I think they're doing Stalingrad. I think it might be in there. I don't know if it is or isn't. But the book is there. They have Battle of the Bulge. The big stuff is there. It's just they're slowly, not slowly, but they're putting out stuff. Like I said, Market Garden's coming up. They're doing a more in-depth book for Overlord that's supposed to be coming out, I think, next month or the month after. So there's stuff there, and it's growing. So the models that you have for Flames of War, you're going to be able to use them most likely in the books that they have out for Battlegroup. You might not have as many options at this point, but you do have options there. So I mean, you could play both systems, and it's not that big of a deal. If you're coming from Battlegroup to Flames of War, it's all there for you as far as theater options go. Next up, I was going to talk about was going to be your missions variety. So when you go into, you play the game, half of the fun of it is your variety of missions. So Flames of War, out of the core rulebook, you have there's for version 4, there's not that. I think there's 10 missions in there. I think they have a PDF where they might have added some other ones, but the missions in there, they're simple, they're very balanced. So no matter what mission you roll up, this goes back to the talking points earlier, it's very 50-50 as far as the balance of the missions go. Everything is, like I said, is very streamlined, cut down the middle. I have the same opportunity to win a game that you have to win a game. If you're going to stick to the core rulebook, that's what it is. Flames of War, if you want to go outside of the core rulebook, there's tons of resources if you're just willing to dig a little bit and make some tweaks to some missions from previous editions, or some third-party stuff that people have just put up for different campaigns. There is a lot of stuff out there. You just have to dig, and then you have to put some work into actually tweaking it. So that's kind of Flames of War. If you're going out of the core rulebook, it's very balanced, and it kind of feels limited. The missions do get a little repetitive. But like I said, if you're willing to venture out, there's a lot of options out there for Flames of War missions. For Battlegroup, like I said, I've only gotten the core rulebook and the Fall of the Reich, and I've gotten some peeks at some other stuff. I got Barbarossa coming in right now. But the one thing I do like about that is their core missions that you get with the core rulebook, they're about the same amount as the Flames of War one as far as you go core rulebook to core rulebook. You have both of those in there. The cool thing I do like about the Battlegroup missions is there's a lot of random elements in it, and it's balanced, but it's not balanced in the same way. There's a lot of randomness in it, deployments, the way the objectives are set up, who's attacking them. There's a little more variation in the missions as far as how they can play out, and I kind of like that. It makes going back to the basic core missions a little more interesting. They don't get as repetitive because of all the variables that go into them. Like I said, this doesn't make them perfectly balanced either. So some missions you might go in there, and based on what your list is and what mission you guys are going to play, whether you're attacking or defending, you can go from being the king if you were in the attack scenario, but if you go to a meeting engagement or you're defending, it could be a whole different ball game based off what you're putting on the table for your list and what's rolled up as far as mission parameters go. So that's something to look at. Another thing that I do like as well is their army books. Each one of their army books usually has a campaign in it, or some very or they have missions that are kind of detailed toward that. So Fall of the Reich has the Germans against Russians, like there's like 6-mission mini campaigns. So like that's like 6 other missions you can add onto it. The core rulebook, if you get the hardback, there's the 12th SS against the 3rd Canadian, and there's a whole mini campaign in there with all these different missions in there. So every book that you get, theater book for Battlegroup, it comes with its own group of missions that kind of cater toward campaigns for each of those books. So that's kind of cool. So every purchase that you make, you get some extra missions, and it's not like those missions just need to be played there. Like they work into those campaigns, but with some very minor tweaks, you really can. I mean, you really don't even really do any minor tweaks. You just kind of leave some stuff out that might be like campaign based. But like I said, very minor tweaks, and you can use those for any kind of matchup you want. You can bring those over and do, you can bring your Russian front missions over, and they would work well fighting in Normandy with just like some really minor tweaks. And every book that you buy theater wise, you're just building up your mission portfolio. So you buy like 2 or 3 books, and next thing you know, you have like 25 missions that you can choose from based off campaigns and core rulebook missions. So the mission variety, there's a lot for both of them. You just have to be willing to do a little bit of work, I guess, and each one's the best way to explain it. But like I said, there's a lot of variety in each of them. It's how far you're willing to venture out and how much work you're willing to put in, and really it's not that much work at all. It's what you want to get out of it. So that's what I was looking at for mission variety. Cost of entry. This is something. Let me get a drink of water here. I've been talking for a minute here. Excuse me. All right, so cost of entry to get in. So obviously, you're looking at both games. You're going to have to purchase models, rule books, theater book. There's other stuff that I'm not going to get into you buying dice and all that kind of stuff. Most of us have all that kind of stuff. But to play the game at its core, you're going to need your models, your theater book, and your core rule book. So cost of entry for Flames of War, I would say if you're starting from scratch, or if you have a very small collection, I think if you want to get a decent sized army, not just like one list with just like your set options, 1,500 points, that's it. Like, I'm saying like an actual army where you're going to be able to plug and play, pull out, make some changes to your lists occasionally, kind of have a little bit of variety, some points on the side that you'll be able to kind of mix into your lists and make some variations to. I would say between 200 and 300 would be my guess for cost of entry. Like I said, I just built my my Brits up, and I have like my British 11th armor and poles that I'm putting together right now. All of that together, it's a mix of battle. Well, that one's all Plastic Soldier Company, but some other stuff is a mix of Battlefront, Plastic Soldier Company. The stuff that I put together for that, I think between 200 and 300. You're looking for models, and then your core rule book. Like I said, if you're coming into Flames of War fresh, you're going to probably have to buy a rule book. You can get the hardback if you want to spend like $20 or $30, or you can get like the small paperback for like, I think like you can get it like $9 or $10 in most cases. So that'd be like your core rule book for Flames of War. If you have an old rule book, you can upgrade it for free, but that's different. And then whatever theater you're going to play, you're going to have to buy. If you buy the older books, it would be like you can get a compilation book for like $30. Some of them have armies from both factions in there, or you have to buy separate ones where it'd be like, you do like Operation Market Guard, and you would buy a book for the Allies, and then they have their counterpart book for the Germans. So you're looking at maybe $60 worth of books there. It just kind of depends on what you want to play and what you're looking at. So your costs for the army, for the models, to give yourself some variety and some mixing things up, probably looking about $200 to $300, I think, in there for your models, and then maybe another, I don't know, maybe I will say 40 to 70 for your army books and rule books all together. Just depends on what you want to play as far as theater goes and what books are available, because like I said, there are some compilation ones that have mixes of lists in them. Some are on the cheap side. You get some for like $20, but you're very limited on lists. Some are very comprehensive and have tons of options, but you might spend like between $30 and $50 depending on if you're getting one compilation book or two of the larger books. So for Flames of War, to really get into the game, I would say $300 is probably a good point to look at for when you're building an army with options as well as your books and everything put into it. For Battlegroup, getting into it, I think it's substantially less because, like we talked about before, you're in a platoon level to start. You still get some really good games, and I think optimally that's where it works. So you're looking at way less models, which is going to be like less cost. I think you probably for around $100, I would say you can get all the models that you need with a ton of options, because for Flames of War, you buy a platoon, you get a whole platoon. You buy a company box, you're usually going to end up using that. When you buy your tanks and vehicles, you're not fielding them as one vehicle, you're fielding them as platoons of 3, 5, 10. And, those boxes for tanks and stuff like that, like you're looking between $30 and $50 a box, depending on what you're buying. Same thing with like your artillery and all that kind of stuff. It adds up, but you're playing at a company level, so you're going to have more models, and more models are going to cost you more money. Where you're looking at Battlegroup, you have a much smaller model count. Like I said, you only need to field one platoon, so you can, if you wanted to buy one platoon, plus Soldier Company, you get a company for $25, or you can go to Battlefront or some other third-party manufacturers, and you can buy a single platoon, and for like $15-20, and then you have all the infantry that you're going to need. You can buy one tank for your support options for Battlegroup. You don't need to buy like 3, 5, or 10. You literally can buy one tank, and that can be put on the table as one of your support options. You can buy one field gun. You can buy one artillery piece, one Vickers machine gun. Like, you don't need to buy full platoons of stuff for your support. You can just buy one item. So it cuts down on the cost, because you don't need to buy these bulk boxes. You can go shopping a la carte for like Forged in Battle. You can even use Battlefront to buy your Battlegroup stuff. There's all these different companies that you can use. You can just go out and buy one individual piece, or like one individual tank, or one individual platoon, and it'll save you money in the long run. So there's a lot less cost. As far as the rulebooks go, I think there's like a small mini rulebook that you can get for Battlegroup. The core rulebook, I think it's like $10 or $15. It's somewhere in there. Maybe it'd be a little bit more. That might be the PDF, but like all the books too, you have a PDF option, which can save you some money. The good thing I do like about the Battlegroup books, I love the Flames of War books. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The one thing I like about the Battlegroup books, though, is every book that you buy from them, you get an allied option and an access option in the book, and some of them have multiple factions, so like it's kind of cool. Like, you open up Fall of the Reich. I did a review on that if you really want to get a look on it. It's like, it was maybe a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think. But in there you have a full arsenal of German stuff, a full arsenal of Russians, a full arsenal of Brits, and a full arsenal of Americans, and it's all packaged in like a $35 book or $40 book. It depends on where you shop, but yeah, you can usually get it for between $30 and $40. But you get that book, and you have like this massive arsenal for 4 different major nationalities that you can play out of in there, and that's just one book. So you pick up one book, spend $30 or $40, and you get 4 full options for army. So there's a lot of bang for your buck in the Battlegroup books as far as that goes. So you buy the core rule book, you buy whatever theater book that you're going to pick up in your army. Your price to get into the game and actually have some decent sized games on the tabletop, you probably can do it for $150 if you're a smart shopper and are willing to look for some good deals out there. You definitely can do it for $150, and that would get you everything you need to kind of get started. So yeah, cost to entry, it's definitely cheaper for Battlegroup than to get into Flames of War, but that's just because it's model count. It's just the company size of the game. You can play Flames of War at platoon level. It still works pretty good for the lower point games, and it's still fun. But I don't think it's the best way to play Flames of War. I think Flames of War really shines when you start getting up to company level stuff. And last but not least, the last thing to go over is obviously what's the reason we play games? It's to have fun. So like the fun factor for both of these. For Flames of War, like I've been saying the whole time, if you're playing company level games or battalion size games, and like you're getting like just these massive armies on these huge tables, I think Flames of War is awesome for that, because the pacing of the game, it moves, it doesn't really get bogged down in deep rules. So like you can play these bigger games and they don't slow down. They don't slow down because of depth of rules. It works really well for getting a bunch of people on the table and kind of keeping the flow. It's and that's a good thing for large scale games, because there's nothing worse than you getting like this huge battalion size game, or like multiple companies with multiple players, and then you set aside this afternoon and like 7 hours later you're like on turn 3. Nobody wants that. It feels like it feels like a wasted afternoon. It's really, I think it's deflating when you put through that, like all that effort and all those people to show up, and you can't even get like halfway through a game just because it just got too big. Flames of War seems like it handles that really well when you start getting the bigger level games, which is kind of nice. Another thing too is like if you're a competitive player, Flames of War, I think, yeah, Flames of War does tournaments pretty well, and it does competitive play, even if it's like a pickup game. Like it's fun if that's the experience that you're looking for competitive play and larger games. I think Flames of War really does those things well. For Battlegroup, if you're looking for, I think where it excels at is chaos on the tabletop and campaigns and narrative play. Just from the variety of things that can change from turn to turn based on the chits, the way your orders fall, just like so many different variables that kind of go into it. The way that just the way that the turns work, and you guys will see from the battle reports, or if you haven't played or if you've seen people play, like after a couple games, you'll see there's a very different kind of feel to it. The way the fun comes out of Battlegroup is much different than Flames of War. Like I said, for Battlegroup, it shines for narrative, I think, gameplay and for campaigns. And if you're looking for that that level of chaos and unknown to each game that you play, there's a lot of fun to be had in that system for that. And like I said, and for both of these, the one thing I'll say for both of these, like I said, I've given you guys a pretty in-depth rundown comparing the two, but you're really not going to know what either one has to offer until you get on the tabletop and get to roll the dice and see if it's for you. Like, you can listen to people like me talk all the time. You can read reviews on the internet as far as, is Flames of War good or not? Is Battlegroup good or not? Like, what's the experience? You're not going to know until you get a chance to roll the dice. So if you have the opportunity and you know somebody plays Battlegroup and you're a Flames of War player, go roll the dice for an afternoon, man. You can use all your models, and you can bring them over there, and you can play, and you can check it out for yourself. Because I don't think, no matter what kind of reviews that you hear, read, or watch, or how many people like me, you watch on YouTube that are going to talk about this stuff, this is all from our perspective. And I try to be as balanced as I can as far as explaining this stuff to you guys, but ultimately you need to experience it for yourself and go out there and just roll some dice and see if it's up your alley, because that's we're all different. We all have different opinions. We all want to get different things out of our war games. When we go out, that's our hobby. That's our way to release and get away from reality. Once a week or however long you guys get out there. So I would say play as many systems as you can. And like as far as comparing Flames of War to Battlegroup, both are very different. They have different feels to it, but they're both worth playing, and you can play both because they're both 15 millimeter, and with some minor adjustments to the basing, and that's really it. I mean, you just make some minor adjustments to how you base your stuff. You can play both games with one purchase of one army, which it's awesome. Like that's really good. So don't solidify yourself in one camp. Don't be like I'm just a Flames of War player, or I'm just a Battlegroup player, or whatever other 15 mil systems are out there. I'm just a bolt action player or whatever. Play as much as you can, because you might end up liking something that you didn't thought you would like in the first place, just by rolling the dice and kind of having an open mind and going in there and giving it a try. So I hope this kind of helped you guys out, whether you're a Flames of War player that was curious about Battlegroup or a Battlegroup player that was curious about Flames of War, to give you guys a little bit more information as far as what each one has to offer and how it compares to each other. So, tell me what you guys, leave some comments down there. Let me know if you guys got anything out of this, or if there's some other stuff that maybe you guys wanted to touch on that maybe I didn't cover down here, so you can help some other people out. But thanks for watching, and just keep an eye out for some more stuff we'll be doing in the future. So, catch you guys later.